And welcome again to the Study Bible Study, where we study the Bible with study Bibles. Revelation 17:14 tells us, "And they shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords, he is the King of kings, and those that are with him are called and chosen and faithful." Welcome to our study on the book of James. The book of James commentary. James 1:14 tells us, "But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. But when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin. When it is finished, it brings forth death." Now, the Epistle of James stands out as one of the most practical books in the entire New Testament. A brief letter written by a brother of our Lord presents this Christian life as it ought to be lived by every believer. Written to the Christians in the first century, the book of James is a letter of encouragement as well as an instruction to those who stood in the very midst of the conflict at that point in time of our history. Now, it speaks many and varied needs of people who have been scattered throughout the Roman Empire by persecution. The theme of this epistle is practical faith, faith that is dynamic and alive, faith in action, because he is writing to Christians. James is not concerned about conduct, not creed, not about behavior, not about denomination, not belief. Now, his purpose is to take the Christian beyond the age of easy believism and introduce him to a vital and genuine faith that demonstrates itself in a tangible way. Now, James speaks to Christians where they are, in the midst of trial and conflict, experiencing testing and temptation, and inhabiting a strife-torn world. He gives practical solutions to everyday problems that all believers experience. He deals with the nitty-gritty of life. He tells us that a faith that has works is a faith that lasts. Now, the Epistle of James is extremely practical. Its 5 chapters are packed with simple yet profound truths, which can aid you in your Christian life. It's not an easy book because it minces no words, but it will serve as a great source, blessing you as you diligently seek to become a doer of the word. The book is written and expressed purpose of stimulating you further in to a study of the Epistle of James and further studies throughout the Bible. It is not intended to be a full commentary on this epistle, but rather a practical discussion for principal topics James deals with in his letter. I trust that the following chapters will be helpful to you as you put feet to your faith and walk daily in your walk with Christ. This is a commentary on the book of James from the Study Bible Study. Okay. Now, James 1, 2-12. "My brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations," different kinds of temptations, various temptations. "Now, knowing that this your faith worketh patience, but let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. Now, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Let the brother of low degree rejoice that he is exalted, but let the rich in that he is made low, because as that a flower of the grass he shall pass away. For the sun no sooner has risen with a burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower thereof falleth, and the grace of the fashioning of it perisheth. Also shall be the rich man fade away in his ways. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive a crown of life, which the Lord has promised to them that love him." Now, times of trial can be turned into triumph. Now, Webster's dictionary defines happiness as a state of well-being and a pleasurable satisfaction. Many in our world today feel that happiness is a state of mind which they seldom experience. Pressures at home, on the job, and personal problems all blend together to rob the average person of a true and lasting happiness, the ways of the world. Now, the Bible tells us that the child of God, happiness can be a living reality. And more than that, the Christian can be triumphed during the times of great trials. There are 3 things to remember concerning trials. Now, trials are a common experience for all of us. No one is immune. Trials are a part of living. Trials are transitory. C.B. Williams translates 1 Peter 1:6 this way: "In such a hope keep on rejoicing, although for a little while you must be sorrow-stricken with various trials." Trials through the difficult are for a little while. Trials are the lessons, and those lessons should not be wasted. Though enjoyable, not enjoyable, or necessarily good in themselves, trials constitute a divine work for our ultimate good. Jesus never promised an easy journey, but he did promise a safe landing. He is the parachute when you jump out of the plane. He's not the cushy seat and the DVD player in which you watch and sit on as you're cruising in the plane. Now, when each earthly prop gives under and life seems a restless sea, are you then a God-kept wonder, satisfied and calm and free? The streams in the desert. This would be a book by, I believe, A.B. Simpson. Now, shortly before the ascension into heaven, Jesus gave his disciples some great words of encouragement in the world. Said Jesus, "Ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world." John 16:33. Now, tribulation is followed by triumph. Crowns are formed in crucibles. Even the disciples of the first century, Christians today, can be sure that they will experience times of trial and suffering. Nowhere in the Bible are we told that the Christian life is free from troubles. Now, but often when periods of testing overtake us, our natural reaction is to ask, why is this happening to me? I'm such a great person. How can this stuff befall on such a wonderful person as myself? Now, unfortunately, if no immediate answer is found, we become perplexed. Often these periods of difficulty immobilize us. Now, the purpose of trials. Now, in this first chapter of his letter, Apostle James tells us that God has a purpose in the trials of life we experience. In fact, James shares an exciting secret. These periods of testing can be instruments to our own advancement and spiritual growth. Someone has said, a Christian is like a tea bag. He is not worth much until he has been through some hot water. What James is saying in chapter 1 of his epistle is this: pressure produces. Yes, God has a definite purpose in allowing times of difficulty. Always remember that the fiery pressure of the furnace that produces the hardened steel, that it is the fiery pressure of the furnace that produces the hardened steel. It takes tremendous heat and pressure of the earth's elements to create a precious and costly diamond. Now it is the crushed flour that produces the perfume. Yes, my friend, pressure produces. There is a purpose in testing. There is a reason behind every trial. A.B. Simpson wrote, "Out of the pressures of pain cometh the soul's best wine. The eyes that have shed no rain can shed but little shine. Streams in the desert." Now, because there is a purpose in trials, James prescribes an uncommon way of looking at the common problems of life. "Count it all joy," James says, "when ye fall into divers temptations." James 1:2. The word divers that James uses could be better translated various. Be joyful when you find yourself surrounded by various trials. As people speak in the background. Be glad you even know people have people speak in the background when you're trying to record something. Now, notice the apostle used the word when instead of if to indicate the time for joy when you fall into various trials. Times of turmoil and testing are just as much a part of our lives as they were of those first century Christians to whom James was writing. No one is excused from temptation, completion in school, deadlines in the office, even our day-to-day experiences at home, deadlines to meet, career opportunities to pursue at home. Now this provides us with a multitude of testings, and James says we are to be happy when we find ourselves in the middle of difficulty. That sounds like strange advice, but the human reaction is to rejoice when we have escaped a particular problem. It is the normal response to run and shrink from the pressures that face us. But it all depends on how you see the trouble that it comes your way. James knew this. He knew that God does not have a purpose for the problems. He knew that God does have a purpose for the problems that face each one of us every day, day after day, week after week, month after month. I think of a young boy sailing a small boat. One day the string snapped and the boat was blown further and further out. An older boy picked up some stones and threw them at the boat. This really disturbed the little boy, but shortly he realized that each falling stone had a purpose. Each stone went beyond the last and drove the boat back to shore within his reach. Now God has a purpose in our trials. James recommends thankful joy rather than dull resignation. James is not suggesting that we be silly optimists. No, he is recommending the normal attitude and the action of a trusting person who is totally surrendered to Jesus Christ. Count it all joy. It is not the trite response of the shallow superficiality, but the honest assessment of the trusting soul. David wrote, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. Psalm 34:1. Praise was much the pattern of David's life, and yet David faced pressure much greater than most of us will ever see. One of his sons, Adonijah, broke his heart. Another, Absalom, betrayed him. His oldest son, Amnon, committed adultery. Saul hounded him week after week. Yet this man of God, this man after God's own heart, said, rejoice in the Lord, for praise is comely. Trials are common to all, and an attitude of praise is all too uncommon. Well, this is our first session of James, and this is the Study Bible study, where we study the Bible with study Bibles. John 14:27 says, Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, giveth I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. John 16:33, These things I have spoken to you, that in me you might have peace, and that in the world you shall have tribulation. But be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. And of course, Revelation 17:14 tells us, These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings. And those who are with him are called and chosen and the faithful. God bless.